So the next part is part 5 of Mao's rise to power. We have this section and one more section to go, then we're moving on to the next chapter, which is the consolidation of power. So last time we looked at what we looked at in the lecture was, what was happening in Yana and establishing the CCP, growing the CCP, and kind of establishing the ideology, and Mao basically establishing himself as the leader, and the literacy rates, and purging people, getting rid of those who were seen as counterproductive or going against the best interest of the party and the best interest of therefore China. Okay, so now it's time to kind of look at other things that are happening really outside of that. So Japan has not gone away. Japan is still a problem. And so in 1931, Japan invades Manchuria, and installs their own puppet state known as Manchukuo. This should not be anything new to you because we've covered Japan, right, in the past, so we know what's happening. We know the context of what Japan is doing and how aggressive and how brutal they are. Despite this, though, Chiang did not really respond to the aggressiveness, the intimidation, the invasion, the killings, the rapings, all these things that Japan was doing. Instead, he's like, you know what? The real problem is the communists, not the foreign invaders, but the communists. So I'm going to put all my energy and effort into killing off the communists. But here's the thing, despite this hatred for the communists, the Second United Front is attempted again. So they try, the GMD and the CCP try it one more time, because they realize, you know what, like, yeah, we hate each other and we're trying to get rid of one another. But at the end of the day, like, it won't even matter, because if the Japanese win and they invade all of China, or at least important parts of China, like, then what do we have left, but it's not that the GMD went out of their way to kind of form this. The CCP was like, like, we got to unite, we got to link up. So the reason why the Second United Front even happened is because of the CCP. When they sent a letter to Jiang, he is the second in command for Xiang. I know these names sound very similar in their pronunciation. Shang. Anyways. So basically, the CCP told the second in command, Shang, don't attack the communists and unite against Japan instead, And so Chang was like, you know what, like, that's pretty smart. I'm gonna tell Chiang, like, we got to do this. And if he doesn't agree, then I'm gonna put him under house arrest, and that's exactly what happened. He was put under house arrest, and it's basically like, bro, you know, get with it, get with it. We got a revolution. We gotta kick out the Japanese first before we can win against this other group, right? So in 1937, Japan launched a full-scale invasion into China and set up their own government in Nanjing, and a lot of horrible, brutal stuff happened. And so they invaded also the entire eastern seaboard of China. And so China lost all of that. So while the country was united and defeating Japan, the GMD became more unpopular while Mao and the CCP rose in popularity. And that's all happening, right? The Soviet Union at the time was the only country giving assistance to China, but after 1941, the US started to send about 500 million in military aid to China, but to the GMD, not the communist, right? The idea for the US was, we want the GMD, we want the capitalists to win, okay? Next one. In 1941, the GMD turned, once again, surprise, surprise, even though nobody should be surprised. Again, the GMD turned on the communists in the South. This lost Xiang support from home and abroad. So there were efforts to renegotiate, bringing back, like, oh, no, like, that was just a thing. Like, don't listen to that. Like, let's just kind of stick together still. But, Xiang was stubborn. And he was like, no, like, I attacked them on purpose, and I'm going to keep attacking them because I hate them. So this made things worse between both groups, right? In addition to that, Xiang's DMD was weakened by the corruption and the fact that many of his soldiers were living under horrible conditions, sickness, starvation, all that. So there was people who were like, yeah, what's the point of this? Like, I don't even want to fight for this guy. I don't want to fight for this side because this is such a horrible situation. So a lot of them start fleeing and joining the CCP. That should sound very familiar to what happened with Castro. Remember, a lot of Batista's soldiers abandoned Batista and joined Castro. So again, another parallel right there. But some were tied up at night, unlike with Batista. Some soldiers were tied up at night to prevent them from leaving and joining. That's how intense that situation was. So Chiang's leadership becomes a more of a dictator type of leadership, as he used the secret police to arrest and torture and execute civilians who he thought were working with the commies. People were also not allowed to voice any discontent. And it's like, you ever said anything bad about, the GMD and then Chiang, then you were probably going to get executed and placed in jail, right? At best. The economy was also falling, so a lot of people were losing things, were falling into poverty even more. And the GMD's main support, the middle class, was losing money, and so he's losing the middle class too, because they're starting to get poor and fall into the working class, lower class, right? Inflation was out of control. Chiang's answer was to basically print more money, and that's not, if you know anything about econ, that's just not how things work. But then on top of that, Shane was like, you know what? I know you guys are already poor and you guys are struggling and you guys, but I'm gonna raise taxes. And so it's kind of like all these little things are adding up, and people are like, F you, dude. Like, I don't want to be with you. I don't want to work with you. I don't want to fight with you. I'm gonna go join Mao because he seems like he is doing some stuff that might be a little bit better. So the last slide. All of these conditions forced many to turn towards communism, and it kind of made Mao seem like he's credible. Before, it's kind of like, oh, who's that crazy guy? Or like, you know what? I don't know if that guy can actually win. But now with Chang, it's like, oh no, man, maybe Chang's kind of the crazy one. And now Mao's kind of looking good right now. So thanks to the war against Japan, the GMD was spread so thin that Mao was able to kind of take control of areas again in the countryside. In northern parts of China. By the end of the war, the CCP controlled an area populated by 90 million Chinese individuals. So he has a lot of citizens to work with. 1945, the war ends when 2 atomic bombs are dropped on Japan. Japan was already going to surrender before that, but the United States was like, hey, let me show off my bombs to the USSR. Despite the war ending, the hopes of the GMD, the CCP working things out, were gone, right? The Cold War starts, and so two sides are being divided. The USSR had different ideas for what to do with China, and the US had different ideas for what to do with China, right? Both sides wanted their side to win. And so in 1945, U.S. Truman sends his Secretary of State to negotiate a deal between the GMD and the CCP in hopes that it would bring stability to China and that the non-communist side would eventually take over China and be the legitimate government. A truce was agreed upon, but eventually in July of that same year, both sides kind of went back to civil war. Okay, that's the end of it. Bye.